Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to do something, well, pretty incredible. We are going to look at the massive, incredibly complex geography of India, but not just as a landmass on a map. No, we're going to look at it as a living, breathing organism. We're breaking down the intricate lifelines that keep one of the world's fastest-growing economies thriving and pulsing with energy every single day. So, I want you to think about this massive logistical puzzle. How exactly do goods and services move across the world's most diverse landscape? I mean, we are talking about connecting soaring Himalayan mountains, vast dry deserts, incredibly dense forests, and sweeping coastal plains. It is an absolutely immense logistical challenge. How does it work? Well, the answer really lies in these three vital functions: transport, communication, and trade. Think of these as the complementary lifelines, keeping the whole economy alive. They work together perfectly, honestly, just like the circulatory and nervous systems of a biological organism. Without them, supply literally cannot meet demand, and the nation's entire development would just grind to a halt. Part 1. Veins of the land: roads, railways, and pipelines. Let's start by looking at the physical infrastructure moving the lifeblood of the country from village to city and from factory to market. Okay, let's dive into this. Just to grasp the sheer scale of this organism, consider this number: 62.16 lakh kilometers. As of the 2020 to 2021 data, that staggering figure is the length of India's road network. To put that in perspective, that firmly places India as having the second largest road network on the entire planet. And this brilliantly illustrates why roadways are absolutely crucial. Look, if railways are the massive, high-volume arteries, roads are the capillaries. Because they have lower construction costs and can actually traverse highly undulating terrain, like those mountains we talked about, they provide something trains simply can't: true door-to-door service. That is a game changer, because it cuts down loading and unloading costs, giving roads a distinct edge over railways for short distances and smaller loads. But to manage a system this massive, the roads are scaled into a really precise hierarchy. It's kind of like a journey from macro to micro. You start with the massive golden quadrilateral superhighways connecting the megacities to drastically reduce travel time. Then you step down to national, state, and district roads. From there, you get down to the vital rural roads, which are actually getting a special push under the Pradhan Mantri Gramin Sada Yojana to ensure every single village has an all-season motorable road linking it to a major town. And finally, you've got the highly strategic border roads built in difficult northern and northeastern terrains for both security and accessibility. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the massive railway system, which spans 17 distinct zones, relies overwhelmingly on broad-gauge tracks. Out of nearly 68,000 kilometers of route, a whopping 63,950 kilometers operate on this single heavy-lifting gauge. It's essentially the backbone binding the country's economic life together, moving huge amounts of heavy freight and massive passenger volumes over long distances. But hey, land transport isn't just about what runs on top of the ground, right? It's also what runs underneath. Pipelines are quite literally the deep internal plumbing of the nation. Historically, they really just moved water. But today, they transport crude oil, natural gas, and even solid materials converted into slurry across thousands of kilometers. Without networks like the HVJ gas pipeline, which expanded from 1,700 to 18,500 kilometers, or the lines running from Upper Assam and Gujarat, inland refineries and fertilizer plants simply couldn't exist. Sure, the initial setup cost is high, but the running costs are incredibly minimal, with practically zero transshipment delays. Part 2. Conquering water and air. Navigating the vast horizons. We've mapped the land. So let's shift our scale to the environment surrounding our national organism, the oceans and the skies. Honestly, it's hard to overstate this massive dependency. 95% of India's foreign trade volume moves by sea. 95%. In terms of financial value, that represents 68% of all trade. Without waterways, India's interaction with the global market would be practically non-existent. But it's not just the external oceans, it's the internal rivers too. The 2016 Act formally recognized primary national waterways, like stretches of the Ganga for Waterway 1, the Brahmaputra for Waterway 2, the West Coast Canal, the Godavari and Krishna rivers, and the Brahmani. Why? Because water transport is actually the cheapest, most environmentally friendly, and fuel-efficient way to move heavy cargo. By formalizing these internal networks, the government is actively taking the pressure off the burdened rail and road networks.
Now, to facilitate that massive 95% oceanic trade volume, India relies heavily on its coastline, which is dotted with 12 strategic major ports. Think of these as the primary respiratory pores of the nation, breathing goods in and out. You've got the Deen Dayal port in Kandla handling the productive northern granaries, Mormugao and New Mangalore exporting huge amounts of iron ore, Cochin, Chennai, Visakhapatnam, Kolkata, and of course Mumbai, the biggest port of all, with its incredibly spacious natural harbor. Each one plays a highly specialized, strategic role in the global market.
But water on land can only take you so far when geography actively fights back. Which brings us to this critical question. Why is air travel the strongly preferred mode of transport in the northeastern states? Take a second to think about the friction of geography in that specific region.
The answer: airways completely bypass those geographical hurdles. The Northeast is marked by massive rivers, dissected relief, super-dense forests, frequent floods, and complex international frontiers. Helicopters and airplanes just conquer these barriers effortlessly. And the best part is, it's becoming way more accessible for the common citizen, thanks to the UDEN scheme, which is globally unique in its mission to jumpstart regional aviation by making flying affordable.
Part 3. The digital nervous system, communication networks. We've covered the physical movement of goods and people. Now we transition to the invisible signals that coordinate the entire nation.
You know, even before the digital age, communication required massive structure. Amazingly, the Indian postal network is the largest in the entire world. To handle it, they had to physically prioritize data transmission. So, first-class mail, like cards and envelopes, gets airlifted between stations. Second-class mail, like book packets, newspapers, and periodicals, travels via surface transport on land and water. Let's move to and see how this builds, because to manage that sheer volume of physical data in big cities, the postal network introduced 6 rapid response channels. We're talking the Rajdhani, Metro, Green, Business, Bulk Mail, and periodical channels. Think of these as VIP express lanes designed specifically to bypass the standard flow and speed up communication where economic activity is highest.
But obviously, true modern connectivity is electronic. Today, over 2/3 of Indian villages have STD telephone facilities. By perfectly integrating space technology with telecom technology, the government essentially wired the entire country together at a uniform rate. It bridges the grassroots directly up to the higher levels, ensuring information flows instantly across the whole organism.
Which leads us to this powerful, guiding philosophy. Indian talent plus information technology equals India tomorrow. That right there is the absolute core of the Digital India Umbrella program. It's an acknowledgement that for a nation to truly transform, it has to prepare for a knowledge-based economy where technology is the central enabler of change.
Part 4. Interaction with the world, trade, and tourism. We've built the organism. We've mapped its veins, its respiratory ports, its nervous system. Now let's look at how this deeply connected entity interacts with other nations.
When we look at international interaction, the ultimate economic barometer of a country's prosperity is the balance of trade. Simply put, it's just the difference between what a country exports versus what it imports. When you export more than you import, that's favorable. When you import more, unfavorable. No nation can survive without exchanging goods, whether that's exporting gems, software, and agriculture, or importing petroleum and machinery. And this entire exchange relies completely on those transport lifelines we just discussed.
But remember, trade isn't just about physical boxes on cargo ships. It's also about moving people. Tourism has grown remarkably over the past 2 decades. We've got major government schemes boosting this, like Swadesh Darshan 2.0, the Vibrant Village Program, Prashad, and Paryatan Mitra. Tourism is a massive trade component. It promotes national integration, supports local handicrafts, and brings in vital foreign exchange through heritage, eco, medical, and business tourism.
Which leaves us with one final vital thought to ponder. As India continues to expand these lifelines, laying more tracks, paving more highways, opening new flight routes, how can tourism actually drive economic growth through a sustainable development approach? How do we keep the lifelines pumping without exhausting the organism itself? I really want you to think about how these connections shape the future of this incredible landscape. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and keep exploring.